Hello everybody, welcome to another video. I'm not sure what if I'll put this in a series, but I just wanted to talk about research, mathematics kind of in general, but more generally research in its entirety, some historical things I guess, but just what I see as different clear-cut levels of mathematical accomplishment or like issuing of degrees, like when people go to college, what I think going forward, acknowledgement within research difference, like a higher caliber. And I don't really like the word levels, but the intuition's fine enough. But just again, if someone gets an undergraduate degree versus someone who gets a graduate degree versus what distinction I should be made for teachers, for professors, for anybody that would be in structured academia. And so, first of all, just kind of talking about what is mathematics, right? We've proven and derived that it's thematics, right? Stuff with order. So what I'm doing is literally taking physical data, words, which are vibrations, and condensing them down into an axiomatic proof. So I kind of wanted to talk about, the higher levels of mathematics. It's not even really well differentiated within history. I'm kind of in a unique position to talk about it, so I thought this is not supposed to be some circle jerk, but there is relevant applications for proctoring mathematics, giving people degrees, what research in general looks like going forward. Because when I say mathematics, I kind of use it as just a little band-aid for anything, again, that can be proven as true. And so, and that's a completable thing. And so what we've done is the first time from, I want to say again, when the last part of the derivation was speciality, have you ever heard of that word? No, it's special with an ITY. And that completion of that word family, showing that breaking of completeness versus incompleteness. First ever public demonstration of a physical derivation. Again, from first principle is still just kind of like verbiage to say, hey, I'm a person out here. Words already have meaning. All of this logical structure is contained. I mean, that's what language is. And so just kind of trying to build up what, steps of mathematics are in between, going your preschoolers versus your graduate students versus, because again, then you start having, historical implications of gradations of research accomplishment. Right? People that were remembered as gods or senseis or khans or presidents or just these different differentiations within society. And there's only a few big ones and you're well aware of who they are. And so there's different historical sections where it's like, you can say different things could have occurred, different things would occur if you've accomplished certain, so to speak, levels of mathematics. But again, mathematics is a completely solvable thing, and the entirety of logical structure is what I've derived publicly. And so, right, you start off, you go into preschool. Do I see, again, linearity in the terms of progression, preschool to kindergarten to primary school to high school to college? As meaningful, again, for the social development, absolutely. But again, it's just more meeting up with your peers. Your learning is an individual process. So there is differentiation, obviously, within your capacity. But overall, I see school structure, once we get all of the fraud, racketeering, conspiracy out of the way, mostly set as what it should be, what it is, again, pretty much for the entirety of the structure. But again, just what is now called research. Forming your own questions and beginning to answer them should be integrated throughout every process in school. It's just some aspect of individual learning, obviously more instruction when you're a little kiddo, but, to help you socialize as well, but in addition to the actual instruction of learning. But learning is always an individual process. And so the way school's set up structured now is fine. But there are right and wrong things in terms of I haven't even really looked into what was, called Common Core math, but I saw a big social reaction. And whenever there's a big social reaction, something's going on. But there's right answers in mathematics, and the most prominent way people are introduced to mathematics is through calculation, right? A simple word problem. Susie gets 3 apples. She gives one to Johnny. How many apples does she have? But so immediately you introduce kids into concepts, right? Which is good, which is right. I mean, the mathematical structure is consistent. We've seen the entirety of what, again, can be proven. Right? Again, logical exhaustion is we use every single functional word that exists, even the letters and the shapes and the sounds. I mean, like, we use up every bit of things that could exist to represent measurement or represent experience or a data point. And so there's very literally no words left to exist to describe experience. And I mean, again, including if you were to tap your pen in a certain order, you would immediately start forming these numeric limits that we've derived and proven. And so primary school, younger education, I mean, holistically, again, the educational structure to me is pretty much going to function as it currently sits. And so, right, you get people, I don't know, have eighth grade in the United States is a differentiation. What do I think should establish in school in general? Again, I think it's good enough. I mean, I think it's good enough. But for mathematical accomplishment, I just think because it can come so early and it can come in your high school years, it can come in college, it can come in your later years, there's no real time dependence for realization. Oh, you need to be 12 before you learn a language. All that stuff's nonsense. But just merit, accomplishment, what do you do to get this gold star, this diploma? Any sort of demonstration of competence of known research should be, again, right around, I would even say that would up into like a graduate degree. And so I'm trying to make a difference where it's like you would always have an acknowledgement for novel discovery, right? You could be in 7th grade and you're playing around with you get introduced to a function or introduced to this or that, and you start playing around and you produce a novel result, right? That's not going to give you, right? You should get some sort of formal acknowledgement from an institution. I would say from a college institution, but it's not going to like complete your requirements to graduate high school. But anytime some sort of novel development occurs in mathematics specifically, and again, mathematics a logically true assessment, analysis, proof. I mean, it doesn't have to be a completely reduced axiomatic derivation. I mean, I really don't. We'll get to that. But at any point in educational development, if you're a 55-year-old, 75-year-old retiree and you're playing around with numbers or trying to do mathematical research and you discover something, any independent novel derivation should be acknowledged. And that's because, again, I've demonstrated the entirety of the logical structure that exists, but you can still derive all of these results in any section of this result independently, and that should be acknowledged. In the actual degrees, there's a lot of cheating. I mean, I saw that in school. There's a lot of ChatGPT, but just assuming, again, people are going to cheat, but that's low-level shit. If you want to learn and you're putting yourself forward, I think a graduate level, or again, effectively what undergraduate would be, is a demonstration of knowledge of what is known. And then that graduate PhD, again, is the biggest change, I would say, where it has to be some sort, again, obviously it's supposed to be novel research, but the point I'm getting at is I don't see enough novel research actually. I think PhD should be either harder to get, or there should be a distinction within PhDs of field known, you're an expert, you've known the known stuff, and you've done something novel. You can always get acknowledgement for some sort of novel derivation, a novel proof, rederiving a known result at any point. But you've demonstrated enough knowledge of the entire field or of your standard curriculum, and you have some sort of additional novelty presented that's meaningful. Or you could even have an added emphasis on novelty and then another added emphasis on usefulness. But usefulness will typically be rewarded by the market, right? If you have some sort of an analytical process that can be monetized, people are going to pay you for that. And so I think the PhD should either be harder to get, or there should just be added distinctions that are much harder to get for novelty and usefulness of your research, and the PhD level being different from the undergraduate level of demonstrating the known knowns. And so that's really what I think of again, I'm talking about research in its entirety, computer science, engineering, so on and so forth. But again, like musical demonstration, merit should be, musical performance is always, demonstrative, but just any curriculum as is, if it's, the educational structure wasn't absolutely corrupt to all hell, if you complete a curriculum pretty much as is, I agree with, for the most part. But then the higher levels, again, so now that's school. And now, okay, you get the PhD and you get a job, and now specifically, if you go off into industry, it's all kind of like derivative stuff. You're making money, that's great, fantastic, but you're no longer kind of progressing or, at the frontier. You're certainly not even at the frontier yet, but you're not really doing mathematical research anymore. So now this is specifically to academics. People with tenure, people seeking positions, you publish some papers, maybe you have some repute in the field. But again, the social reaction to any sort of results, right? When we have those two girls in high school, they get recognized. I covered them in one of the episodes, but the reaction of just novelty. And again, the result wasn't novel, but the proofing method was. And so you kind of do have a social reaction where that does give you some gauge of like the impact, or at least the novelty or the difference, I guess. But point being is reputation, where you have an Ed Witten or just Sean Carroll or Brian Keating, or just people, again, that I've clearly voiced they're criminals. That's straight up. But focusing on, again, the administration of school, recognition of accomplishment within research. Like if you put yourself out there, right? All of these, like me, truly, I classify what I do in research in its entirety is simply making YouTube videos, right? All of mathematics is a completable toolbox that's sitting right here. I can do this analysis anytime, any place, anywhere, but now go make some value, go put something out into the world. And so, when anybody else is sitting down doing a YouTube video, they're still self-filtering and refining their own vocabulary. And so I do think there's a tremendous, again, this is, amongst tenured professors or, people, academics that are career academics, right? Making a YouTube channel or sitting down and self-talking through all of these different subjects, and doesn't have to be your field of expertise, is, I would say at the professorship level, expected. There's no, again, that's your job. Like you're employed to educate, and part of education is teaching, and teaching, right? There's always that social component, going to the actual university, going to conferences, sitting down with your circle jerking idiots because you guys can't make your own money. But I'm trying to keep it not that insulting, but fuck you guys. But that aspect, but then individual learning, but then also talking through your own individual learning, both in a group setting and personal. And so YouTube channel, I don't see why every tenured professor talks again about a variety of subjects. Again, push your boundaries, because you're just exposing yourself to other parts of ontology, vocabulary that is the same fundamental concepts. And so you're just, as a career academic, I don't see there's any room for not continuing education, and that's demonstrated. And so I think that is a requirement for professorship, is making some sort of ongoing video lecturing thing. And so then for like what I don't even classify again for what I do strictly for derivation, right? So before you guys had met me, we didn't have the axiomatization of physics, or at least you guys didn't. And so physics is completed, mathematics is completed. There's the first derivation, which has tremendous social and historical value of showing you the entirety of logical structure. And then there's all that's left to do is just iterate it. And it's not even anything new, because I've already logically exhausted all of the letters. And so it's just like this profound iteration process that's completely limited by time passing for the intuition to develop, and then all of the language is forced to the front of the species, of the sentience. It's not me over here producing the results. I just have a capacity where it's, even with all of the data you see me process, it's still like having a supercomputer, and the input is like 1 + 1 = 2. Do you think you can handle 1 + 2 = 3? It's like, pretty sure we got that. So as soon as the data is available, it gets processed, so to speak. And so in addition to showing and deriving the entirety of mathematical structure, then like, could that have been done without, could you have done a chunk of that? Or will, like, again, the iteration, because I'm showing you the form of all solutions. And so going forward, once I'm dead, I don't see it. There's no way you can catch up while I'm alive. But when I'm dead, the how will the derivation continue? I see it be there's no reason a single individual couldn't, and there'd be very clear if someone was getting going, right? I mean, you can see how long the process is, and I'm doing it at maximum that you can do it. So you have a time frame. If someone was getting going on an independent derivation of an axiom, you could very quickly pick that up. Now that you kind of know what it would look like. And so is that even, I mean, it's certainly possible, obviously. Is it likely? I mean, I'm talking ever. No, because the initial conditions, right? You have to be in an environment where the intuition throughout the species is we don't know the foundations of physics. And so on a personal level, I have that intuition. And if you were in a society that already has that realization, whether it comes from an individual or collectively over a longer period of time, which I don't have a good gauge of how a section of sentience of civilization comes online, so to speak. So I just don't have any data points for that. But going forward, I think it will be more collective. There's obviously no reason an individual couldn't do it, but to get the intuition to be able to see the whole thing, the initial conditions of not having that intuition present in the whole totality of the species, I see as like incontrovertible, irreplaceable. Once it happens once, you can't unsee it, so to speak. And so I don't think you could have the entirety. There's no I could be wrong on that. I could be wrong, but it would be so apparent if somebody's getting to an axiomatic derivation. Because the form of the word, like when we finish sensorality, again, those are just syllables. It will produce the next form. So you'll see like what word. And so while I'm alive, there's no chance to like catch up. But when I'm dead, there'll be a very clear, you have to work up till this point, which is I mean, you've seen the amount of steps that I've articulated to you. And so, but then historically, you can look at, again, so we kind of cut off, again, I don't see, you'll have some sort of social reaction to your research if you're doing something intuitively novel and intuitively valuable. So, I mean, Terrence Howard goes viral for saying 1 times 1 equals 2. It's more of just like this shock value novelty. It's like it's all clearly wrong. And so, but then if you do have some sort of novelty and it has value, like saying, hey guys, everyone's saying good vibes only because vibration is the base and rhythm regulates efficiency because it clearly fucking does. So your physics models. And so it's like, again, I'm still at a point where my work is not recognized. So it's like I'm doing this performance where I rederive everything and people don't see these higher levels. And so the next level pass, again, academic researcher, tenured, the Nobel Prizes and stuff, I mean, it seems in general to be given out in good, earnest scientific discourse. The whole societies of, I mean, they gave it to the frontal lobotomy, which is clearly not good. I mean, but it's like, so you can get things wrong. It's done in good faith. To me, it's completely irrelevant. I don't say it's complete. I mean, if it's just, again, you guys have never seen a complete proof before. So now once we get out of the ontological shock, I mean, we're learning vocab word and there's just no more other words to use. And we've used all the fundamental principles. So again, vibration and rhythm are never going to change. So there's nothing left to big ideas to introduce. But then historically, there's clear differentiation, right? Between, a president, a leader, an emperor, a god, right? And that's, again, what is recognized by God with a capital G is a law office. And there is a female presence throughout that. And so with this fundamental intuition of being the initial conditions of not having society know the entirety of physical structure, you're telling a story. And so that story involves a lot of other sentience. And so it's like there's historical value for outside parties on that. But life is just serendipitous. I mean, it's just like you're just kind of interacting with the things around you. From human beings, it's this very, human beings are coming online with the, right, you're in a dark room and you're like, think you're alone and then you turn on the lights and there's everyone around you and you're like, but everyone around you is just like, dude, just chill. We've always kind of been here. So that's really effectively what's going on. But you have historical awareness or responses to people that haven't been called mathematicians, that it's clearly given. Mathematics is a solvable thing. And so the all of academia has not even been remotely close to a derivation of mathematics. I mean, not even I'm trying to give you accurate differentiations, and we'll just use the IQ scale because again it's close enough to make something relevant. But like Jesus, right? Clearly the most eminent social impact in the past 2000 and what year is it? 26 years. And so, but again, then he's, historically classifying as the Son of God, or, or the Word of God. He's not saying, like, he self-differentiated from, historically written, from previous, because at these higher levels of derivation, you see the huge jumps other people don't. So that's what's happening historically there. But the capital God is a law office, right? Follow the word of God. And the commandments is the preservation of the derivation of legal axioms, right? And the first commandment, right? Follow only this. So it means follow this God is literally, I'm not, it's an acronym that I don't really know what it is. But it derives, again, it presents itself because of female being different than males having the dominant authority simply because of size, making you odd, making you different. And so, but then entirely that's in the individual swamped within this huge presence of a law office effectively. And so again, the first commandment being, and they're really written like no, like just know this, know that, do not, no, do not, no, do not, kind of like that. And so, but they're just laws. I mean, it's like the derivation and preservation of the first. And so like that, when you get into legal impact, I would say, like when you're deriving common law, Jesus was certainly into that. Again, the prophet would certainly be up into that level, which is still a substantially lower level than, again, getting to when you get the historical reaction of the word of God, the word of law, is effectively what that would translate to conceptually. It's still a big step up from intuitively knowing what to do, where you would get a leadership, people would literally follow you, but you're still not, like, you don't reduce a whole proof. And so you don't even get kind of close to reducing a whole proof. And so that's a big jump up, like a huge substantial jump up from where, again, I'm saying I would estimate, again, like somebody like Jesus or the prophets' IQs into like effectively into like the 400s, 4 to 500s. And I've said this, but again, just refreshing because it seems relevant to talk about. And then the law office with this single individual that's female into an IQ range of about probably say about 800, 900-ish. Because there's clear historical impact, right? How many people want to get rich? How many people want to get famous? How many people say, you sneeze and they say, God bless you? I mean, it's that level of impact. And you have to, again, proof by logical exhaustion, demonstrate consistency throughout the entirety of the structure of language. And so, but then again, it's hard for me. I sit here and say, okay, where's the evidence that they reduced a whole proof? Because when I effectively refreshed, started all over, was, speciality is special with an ITY. I mean, that's it. And so it's like, where is that level of reduction within ontology? It's not present. And so, because it said it's one continuous thing, chronology is obviously doing its thing, regardless of me, regardless of you, regardless of one individual. And so, all of the results are independent of myself personally. And so then you have, again, the historical impact up into that level, I would say about the 900 effective IQ, but more, again, effective standard deviation, total creative output. And so, but then again, at the highest levels, you're just telling a story, but the story has to be correct, right? History. And so, but the completion of it, deriving all physical structure, again, is substantial. I mean, it's, again, another up to like 1,000. I mean, you have to go another I don't know the amount of standard deviations, but a huge chunk up from historical impact to that level, but without completing and reducing a proof, where, again, that simplicity of preservation would be apparent, right? And it's not there. And so identifying the entire structure of physics right? If I'm not here, I mean, forget all the, even the historical impact. I don't see the first thing that would occur would somebody be throwing up their hands and saying, hey guys, to some extent, language, we're using all of these words to describe physics, mathematics, chemistry, computer science, business, and they're all the same words, and we're just using them in different contexts. So it's like some articulation of the logical consistency of language. I don't know why that hadn't already occurred. The actual brute force capacity to iterate, or so like, is there a mathematical proofing method less than, like, there's nothing else I would ever do in mathematical proofing besides logical exhaustion. There's just nothing, it's complete, it's the only complete thing you can do. It demonstrates the incompleteness of the next axiom, that's why it builds the word form. But anybody could have articulated, again, just logically that, hey, there should be some consistency to language. To actually start to prove the identities, to introduce the logical structure, I mean, it's just such a huge jump immediately. Because when I interact with other people, again, everybody knows something, everyone has this attenuation to the nuance of language. But then if it's like the amount of data points you have to build, because words contain the meaning. And so you have to literally form not words. You have to break it down to the syllables, which you have to have so much physical intuition to introduce these things. Then you have to have the intellectual capacity to prove every identity. There's no notebooks, there's no rule, there's no guidance, obviously. And so I don't know what, after you articulate language is consistent, clearly we're making some sort of differentiation in ontology with math, physics, these different subjects. And so I don't have a good gauge of like how much of a difference, but it's substantial, and again, proven by history. And so the derivation, and so then it gets up to, and that's, again, I would say that's when you max out mathematics. There's no other theme, right? Because theme is based on order, and order comes from chronology. And so we're deriving from things that don't even have structure, they don't have shapes to them, and you have to intuitively know all of the implications. And I would describe it as profoundly trivial. Like, I don't have to think about breathing. I don't think about any of these steps. It's just immediately I can articulate it, and the intuition just has to build by time passing, like literally. And so it's like, could you have a derivation of an axiom where it's like you do it one time and then you're like, phew, wipe your brow? I don't think so. I think it would be all or nothing. Like, again, it's just a repeatable process every about 7 years. But you could definitely have, and so I don't know how big of a jump that would be. But then there's again clear steps past that. Let me make sure camera's still recording. So picking back up what I'm saying is, again, you identify this structure and then you prove it all. You prove everything that could be possibly proven within mathematics about there's always derivative, like there's always application, invention. Like I said, I watched Shark Tank, plenty of things on there, and like, oh, I didn't think about that. Great application, clear understanding of physics, vibration, rhythm, these application of principles. But there's always, again, we derive all of the structure where you can show you, again, where the twin prime conjecture comes, what prime numbers even kind of come from. So that's all contained within mathematics. And so once you have that complete structure, then there's what I would say is personal derivation. And so objectively, a tree exists in the woods, even if no one's around to hear it fall down or makes a noise, or whatever. Things exist. And so each person is interacting with the world, and they have some sort of conceptualization and formalization of how things work, and they describe it. And so they're still, even again, they have intuition, they have experience, and even if they use every wrong word possible, if they use it in any sort of logical order, I can immediately root back conceptually what they're talking about. And so then there becomes this immediate ability to what I call personalized proofs, I guess you would say, but demonstrate a proof. You just establish a fact. So you take anybody and they can articulate anything logically, and you can immediately prove something to them, which kind of forces this self-realization. That's where you guys get ontological shock if it's something you can't accept because you're delusional. But you can have this personal proofing thing where it's everybody. Or it might just be one person that you know well, but then it gets to everybody because they're all interacting with the world and it's the same logical structure and they're all still trying to use words. They're just talking about the world in a level of generality. So you just pull them down to a level of specificity where they effectively can't unsee something that is true. And it's not like a gotcha. It's not like some weird psychological process. It's just learning. But the learning is so apparent and readily available that it just hits you. And if you can't accept the historical implication, it shocks you. Ooh, words, scary stuff. But that's trivial. I mean, it's another huge step up from iterating, where it's like, again, I don't have to like study. I don't like write something down as all intellectual property development. But it's like, I don't have to be sitting here doing this. If I go walking in a store and I hear one syllable, it connects to over here. So when you have the raw capacity to extend implication to completion immediately, and then you've already iterated the whole structure, that stuff is, again, profoundly trivial. And so that would be, I would say, me personally interacting with another person personally. And then you get, there's another step, where it's, again, these are clear differences of like functionality interacting. And then you have where it's just you're in a group of people. And Johnny's talking about structure. He's talking about his experience with the world. I don't know, he's a businessman and he's talking about the logistics chain of how he's going to ship something from Thailand to India. I don't know, making up random examples. But again, there's work involved. Literally, his job, it's my work. But you're thinking of efficiency. The timing of your packages, of your employees, how much you're paying, your overhead. So that's logical structure. And you have somebody who's they're working at Walmart or something, and they're working as the cashier, and they're doing more mental calculations because they're handing out money all the time, and they're managing employees more directly than the business guy who's, doing sales or something. But it's all still the same logical structure. So then you get to a point where you can take any two people and you can just pose a question in the presence of other people, and then the logic of their stuff will start to synchronize. And so they will start causing each other like ontological realization, and all you did was like catalyze the conversation, literally. And then you turn 7 years old, and it's like, what am I supposed to tell somebody? Because it causes this ontological shock, and when you're younger, you're a literal kid, so people there's such a clear personal historical change of I am a young kid, so they're like, oh, that's kind of like a fun fact from a kid, so now I don't have to get mad or try to like get violent or abusive to this thing. And then as you get older, that definitely goes away. And so it's just like, but again, that's like kind of where like I would say research starts, because first principle science is, again, you have to be able to do the entire process of mathematical proofing, derivation, and iteration. You wouldn't have to do the iteration part, but it just happens, so I might as well write it down. But you would have to have the complete physical structure to begin doing first principle science. Everything is connected, nothing is touching, go. And all of the proofing is self-contained. I mean, that's what we're demonstrating. Again, I'm not sure where I'm going to put this video. It might just be its own thing. But that's a very clear step, and that's kind of how I said research started for me, was any two people, because when I'm in school, that's what would happen. And then it always renormalizes on a personal level, because again, effectively derivation, mathematics, all mathematics becomes a performance. Can you keep doing the same derivation? And the answer for me profoundly is yes. Again, to the point where it's not a thought, it's more trivial than breathing. Because I can literally control my breathing. I can make myself breathe slower if I want, if I'm not thinking about it. But the derivation is always just like there. It's just there. But that's where mathematics, or again, that's not, I don't classify it as mathematics. That's why I never was like, I'm a mathematician. Oh, look at me, I'm a faggot. But it's just like, I'm a person trying to live my life. And then, because then immediately, everything I just told you about mathematics and history is completely true. And then it's like, okay, go pick a stock. But you can even ask more foundational question, like, again, what was the first language? Yeah, languages aren't unique. Yeah, it's the syllables. True, proven, I was the one who did it. But French is still French, German is still German, Korean is still Korean. Which one came first? There's enough intuition. That's a well-posed question. I don't know. Language iterates. I have words that clearly have meaning. I've shown definitive, undeniable consistency within effectively what is completely generalized, all pretty much arbitrary, but they're just meanings associated with words. Those words represented with symbols. Those have shape to them, geometry. Which one language was first? And so you're always, again, in school, you're always exposed to, again, the incompleteness theorem. There's infinitely many things that are well posed, defined, that you can ask me immediately. I can't answer. And so it's just like, you don't see that huge depth of mathematical differentiation. And then because, again, school is always, everything numerically was reducible to a fraction. All I'm doing logically is effectively cross-multiplying syllables. And again, there's immediately infinitely many questions that are well posed that I can't answer. So it's like, I've never once been like, I'm the super smart, but it's like interacting with my logical structure in the same way you shake someone's hand or you bump into somebody in the road and you can like feel them, right? When people interact with me, they feel the amount of logical structure that's there. And they just don't know the different like kind of levels. And so you go through school where it's like, that's happening where like no one, like people, when they interact with me, it's like, I know a couple fun facts, like they know I'm logical, but they don't, there's no clear, from my perspective, clearly no acknowledgement of really what's occurring. And so infinitely many things, I get things wrong, I misspeak, I do everything everybody else does, just with a lot more data pieces moving around. But then also, it's not even an analogy to say, it's like everyone speaks in fundamental ontology all of the time. That's what a complete sentence is, as you demonstrating consistency. And so it's like you're walking through the world and people are just blurting theorems out at you all of the time. And they have to be specific or at the right time for you to connect these different dots. So again, there's nothing to memorize, there's nothing to remember. And so you're always renormalizing. For me personally, when I go out and then I see, it's like I've already been exposed intuitively, even before I did by the time I was 7, I had what was, again, physics completely axiomatized functionally. And so when other people talk about logical structure, it's like, I know how to play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and I've played it so many times, and I hear somebody else start to play it, you can hear exactly which notes go wrong where. And then it's intuitively interesting to see why they use that wrong word. Again, assuming they're not misspeaking, which has information of itself. But you can see logical structure kind of done wrong, but it's in such a genuine, right? You ask any linguist if they have exposure to natural conversation, that's the most poignant data collection, and for me too. And so you get that renormalization of always seeing other people and having that exposure to where you can see the congruence, what they're saying is correct, and that conclusion's wrong. So on a personal level, you always have this, again, a sense of self-identity. And so you're not recognized, you're not famous by any means, but you know on a personal level what you're doing is valid. And then, since I've been, 22, we're, again, completely done derivation of an axiom. There's absolutely objectively nothing left to do. With no acknowledgement, and on a personal level, my life is still fucked. It has just created the biggest hell that could have ever existed. And that is right now, today, that has not changed whatsoever. But point being is, each time you hear somebody discuss logic, it gives you some sort of sense of personal identity, but then it also, again, that's where you learn is how people use the words incorrectly. And so when you remove me from a social group, I no longer have that renormalization, meaning constant exposure to other people using language and interacting with logic and making sense or not making sense. And so on a personal level, that's kind of like the biggest difference, but again, it doesn't matter. I mean, I have a computer, right? It's like how many people speak English that I never want to speak to? It's like, I have exposure to language and socialization that way. It's just the gaslighting. People like not acknowledging what I've done, and then it just affects your personal life. Because I objectively never wanted to be famous, always wanted to be profoundly rich. But now it's just like, are you guys really just gonna fucking take my whole life? It seems like it. And again, you guys have scapegoated me and slandered my name in such a way that's profoundly and historically disgusting, obviously. So none of the legal consequences, nothing is going to change. And each day you don't acknowledge anything, it gets worse. But to kind of like finish up, or I don't know, but the mathematical levels, again, proof by logical exhaustion is the most that could exist. Once there's extreme novelty to And now that section of sentience of, again, because it's a physical demonstration, right? Like reverberation was like, again, I derived that, what I would say, a physical derivation, meaning I'm not thinking of words, I'm sitting there singing, like vibrating, and the word just forms, reverberation. And so, again, vibration was the first one, obviously. Well, I don't know if it's obvious, but, and so you get to a point of physical demonstration of incompleteness. And so that is independent of species, and the initial conditions, again, certainly not present amongst the solar system. And so the initial conditions are huge, and then, right, because historically people will say, right place, right time, and it's just like, you've seen the entirety of what an axiomatic derivation looks like. And again, to me, it's so intuitive because it all comes from this, again, personal level of incompleteness, where it's I know the whole iteration process, so I can't like stop doing it, I guess. But it's not like it's like overwhelming, like absolutely not. It's the opposite. It's like your head's just completely clear. You're a master with your paintbrushes, and it's just like, okay, what do we got to do? And then it's just like, oh wait, I mean, you're physically limited. But for, again, like, not even being, obviously it is what it is when it comes to my interactions with the academic community. Again, I'm still sitting here with the most dense mathematical handwritten manuscripts in history. I want them to be preserved. And then what the fuck was that? I still have no idea. But regardless, it's like, if I'm just sitting here trying to encourage other people's learning process, when I sit down and watch other people talk physics, past Tversky, and again, that's when I'm talking about people, other researchers, back to known historical achievements in math, people that, again, have made their names kind of my age, Schultz, Pastersky, Tao's a little bit older than me, but him, Terence Tao, and it's kind of like it. Like, those are kind of like the names I've heard of in Pastersky, and then that real chick, again, she hasn't done anything new. But again, if you don't even classify as a physicist, there's not even like the beginning to maybe have an intuition where it's like kind of relevant. I just know the real chick because it says a new paradigm of mathematical proof, and it's like, oh god, here comes super fraud. But point being is, when I watch their lectures or discussions, like, the best I can get is like it kind of makes sense for like 2 seconds. And so, like, I'm not even trying to be rude. Again, I'm literally going as much legal penalty as possible. It is what it is. But strictly sticking to assessment of their understanding. Because, again, now you have, again, like, it sets the standard of what mathematical derivation could be. And derivation is the highest level of, like, and when I say mathematics, I really mean logical. Again, anything that can be established is true. And we're provably at the frontier where we've already derived all of mathematics. We're like going from entropy to energy. We're going from disorder to order. In a much more, again, immediate physical sense. But I can't even follow. It's not that I can't follow, it's just they're talking about nothing. Like, there was no substance. And so, in terms of what people, again, circle jerk to as being a pure mathematician, which, again, doesn't exist, but this logical iteration, or, go from thought to definitive physical proof, is so much, again, so much more immensely, anybody in academia looking at what I've done, again, profoundly trivially, again, now that you've seen the whole process, can you, who wants to step up? Like, you see the first principle, you see the general forms, you see the connecting logical structure. This is to that, what that is to this. It is what it is. Sensorality this whole time has just been 2 syllables in a word form. You guys could have iterated this. Sure, you can get the final reduced like word form by iterating the letters, but can you do this logical analysis step by step? Now it's no. Like I said, you can it's just right there, just look at it. So I'm assuming the answer is no. But I'd love to be proven wrong. Because then again, you would literally be able to freestyle, like a rap battle, right? And then, right, you have the historical example of, like, I don't know, I think it was Beethoven or Mozart, somebody else, or Schumann or Bach or whoever. But one historical composer flips another historical composer's work upside down and plays it backwards and improvises. And so, like, there's like clear levels where it's like, we could interact if you guys like knew how to like you can't run a race until you know how to tie your shoes, and you guys don't even know what like laces are. It's like, I got nothing. And so like I said, that's even, so those are like the Pasterski, the Reel, the Schultz, Tao a little bit, but Tao, I would say Tao even more so into like the Sean Carroll. I'll categorize it more into the, mid, I don't know, Sean Carroll's gonna be what, like 55, mid 50s, something like that. But then you get to, again, like the Ed Wittens, the older, Roger Penrose, he's got to be like 85, going on 90. But just, again, physical intuition, again, as I've said, Sean Carroll articulates the best that I have seen. To me, Ed Witten doesn't. I mean, everyone in the physics world is like, oh, Ed Witten, But again, like I said, the linguistic reaction to his work and his social reaction to his work is more. And then again, what string theory is. Again, I've derived the entirety of what strings, like why the social historical phenomenon of string theory. We've derived that. And so I've never gotten any sort of insight in that sense from anybody. But like, who articulates, and again, demonstrating, writing popular science books or having a YouTube channel is a clear differentiator, again, amongst your professors, your tenured academics, career academics. And so those are the differentiations I see as poignant and as real. And again, there's still some more, like, if we could have a conversation, you could ask me questions, like the higher levels. Again, it's all demonstrable. Like I said, you probably think it's not a circle jerk, but again, when you guys interact with me and I pass your test and it's like, you guys aren't even like if I can count to 5, yeah, I can count to 2 and I can count to 3, but it's just like for the, I don't know what you call it, psionic locating stuff. It's like, it's such a juvenile application of awareness. It's like, tag, you're it, Marco Polo. It's like, if there's a signal, of course it's coming from somewhere, but like, what's like, I'll get into it in a different video. I want to strictly stick to mathematical accomplishment and administration of, again, degrees and schooling. But there are some other things that just, when you're an expert at something, and it's not that people will just say things where it's like they clearly don't know what they're talking about. And when it comes to awareness, even from super science teams, some of the things you say and some of the information you've released it doesn't add up for what I definitively know is true within civilization. And so, but it's not super relevant to actual, again, mathematics, meaning logical derivation. Because all of this, what I would classify as is research, putting all of these pieces together. First principle scientists being completed mathematics. But yeah. And so that's what I really have for mathematical structure. It's just, again, I felt like I talk about any time, it's because it's the same feeling of intuition. And it just feels like, again, when I see other people who talk about physics, it's just like, they're still missing. Like, people are still just like, without acknowledgement, public acknowledgement of my work, it's just always cumbersome. But anything else? Not really. So that's all I have that comes to mind. Probably do another derivation episode here today. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.